Hello, and welcome back to the Heart of Truth podcast. I'm your host, Amanda, and today we're going to get into a really honest and nuanced conversation about one of the most critical but kind of overlooked aspects that is running through the spiritual field, the inversion of the feminine. So we're going to get into the dark mother, sisterhood wounds, the feminine inversion codes, the Jezebel program, and how it shows up in fairy tales. So we're going to get a really full picture here about how this operates and where it comes from and why it's really important to understand and be able to recognize it in the field. So it's really quite complex the way the feminine distortion shows up in spiritual spaces, because it's not just the patriarchy that is causing this distortion. It's how the feminine itself has been weaponized against the entire population, masculine and feminine, through this dark mother inversion. So again, it's not about blame, never is. It's about clarity. It's about understanding. It's about purifying the field, purifying our perception, and restoring the true organic feminine codes and the true organic dark mother, actually. So, when we have clarity on the dark feminine archetype, how it has been hijacked, we can see how it plays into the spiritual distortion, the sisterhood fractures, priestess inversion codes, false light feminine leadership, anti-female misogyny. So we're going to get into the actual origin of the patriarchal inversions, as well as lunar consciousness versus solar consciousness, okay? So there is a lot here. It's nuanced and complex. What I'm going to try and do is create a big picture overview and connect some of the major dots. This is obviously a very deep and complex subject, so we won't be able to touch on every single aspect of it, but to really help to, again, anchor this in and paint that broader picture. So let's get into the dark mother archetype to create that foundation. And just so you know, I do have a lot of notes here because I really wanted to make sure that I covered the bases. So if I'm not, for those watching this on YouTube, perhaps if I'm not looking at the video, it's because I'm trying to anchor into the notes to make sure I don't miss out the important nuances to share here. So basically, the dark mother, it sits behind both this distorted matriarchy and the distorted patriarchy. We could even say that it sits kind of between the two, but it's really driving both distortions. So it's not just about masculine oppression. When we have these deeper conversations about distortions in the spiritual field, spiritual narcissism, ego, predatorial behavior, it's definitely not just the masculine to blame here, okay? The feminine distortion, honestly, is feeding off of it. So it's not actually, and here's something that we really need to anchor into, it's actually not the masculine that created the patriarchal structures. When I learned this or heard it for the first time, I was kind of mind blown on a subtle level, but it also resonated as, yeah, that actually makes sense. Because where does the patriarchal wound come from? Where does the patriarchal inversion and distortion come from? So behind much of the patriarchal control, misogyny and feminine suppression is actually an inverted dark mother distortion that weaponizes the wounded feminine against itself, okay? So it's really interesting to dive into this. So originally, I also want to be really clear, the dark mother is not necessarily bad. So we're really talking about the inverted dark mother, the shadow aspect of the dark mother. So she becomes, when she's inverted, so this is how it works energetically, right? When she's inverted, she becomes kind of this devouring dark mother. It's very weird and not so fun to think about, but it's the smothering feminine, the devouring kind of vampiric type energy energy even. The control-based womb matrix is also based off of this inversion. It's very enslaving, possessive, manipulative. So one of the key aspects of the inverted, distorted feminine in general is this manipulation, the manipulative energy that drives the control, that drives the siphoning, if you will. So it masquerades as protection and safety in a lot of cases, but really what's underlying it and driving it is a sense of control, a desire for control. So it manipulates both men and women, again, to be very clear, into inverted power structures. So men will adopt this domination, control, suppression of the feminine mentality, whereas women will often adopt the self-betrayal, people-pleasing, or even competitive priestess type distortions, competitive sisterhood type energies. And it goes both ways, right? And again, we're talking about more so the masculine energies and the feminine energies. So women can embody the masculine, men can embody the feminine a little bit more. It really depends. And of course, we all contain both. So it can actually play out. We can have the distorted masculine and distorted feminine energies running through us simultaneously, and one might come out more prominently in this situation, whereas the other might come out more prominently in this other situation. So again, it can get complex, and I don't want to create confusion, but to really paint this picture so that people can really begin to connect the dots for themselves and to understand what's really going on and what's driving all of this manipulation in the field. So again, never from fear, always from clarity, so that we can all return to love and harmony, because you can't heal what you can't see, right? We cannot heal it if we cannot face it. So getting a little deeper in spiritual fields, this often does express as the kind of false, distorted priestess circles. Their, sisterhood kind of becomes not just competitive, but even parasitic. And there's a lot of just really unfortunate distortions going on in these priestess circles, and it can become cult-like even, honestly, but the betrayal wounds get activated and they turn against each other. Not to be like, I wasn't in a formal priestess circle, but I've definitely dealt with these sisterhood wounds in this lifetime, the betrayal. And it's that dark feminine energy that was driving this behavior for sure, undeniably so. So this also plays into sexual distortions that are basically disguised as empowerment. So we see that a lot in the priestesses out on Instagram. They give themselves the label of priestess or high priestess or queen or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently, because many of us truly are on this path of devotion. I kind of feel like the word priestess has gotten quite distorted. So I'm preferring to use the term oracle at this point, because that actually is, part of my coding. But to not label myself so much as a priestess, because it has become co-opted and hijacked and distorted in many cases. Not all, of course, not across the board. Many are carrying their organic codes and really putting forward teaching in integrity. But what I keep thinking of is all of these women who are just, in the name of sensual embodiment, just kind of being these sex kitten figures in the name of spirituality. So it's that sex kitten energy, spiritual or not, that this looks like. So this can very much be this kind of half naked, like moving your body like that. There's nothing wrong with that, again. But it's like, what is the energy driving it? What is the intention behind posting it? You can feel it if there is a distortion in the field there. A lot of the the energy comes off as just like overly performative and displaying too much. And it's also this idea of the yoni versus the womb was something that I was really feeling into. The worship of the yoni versus the worship of the womb. There's a huge difference, actually. So when you focus so much on the yoni, you're focusing on the gateway to the Holy Grail versus the Holy Grail itself. You're focusing on pleasure versus creation. The womb is the center, the portal of creation, whereas the yoni is more the threshold of pleasure. And yes, the two can very much go hand in hand. And yes, a lot of healing does need to be done on that gateway into that portal of creation, because of so much of the sexual trauma that women hold. To be sure, a lot of healing can be centered around the yoni, but there's so much overt focus on the yoni in certain circles that there is a very clear distortion going on there. The yoni versus the womb, okay? Huge difference. So this also looks like matriarchal power systems that are basically just inverting the patriarchy rather than healing it. So, men suck, I don't need men. That's more of like the feminist mentality, which is very distorted unto itself. Whole other conversation. But it kind of does tie in here, obviously. But it really creates more separation. So we're not trying, the rise of the divine feminine is not to overpower men or to overpower the patriarchy with another inversion. It's to bring harmony. So, excuse me, the men, the male energy, the masculine energy has been dominating. And so the rise of the feminine is to bring balance, to come into harmony, to come into equalization. So this is a huge nuance that people really need to understand. It's not that women are meant to dominate now. It's that we're meant to come back into balance and this dynamic harmony. And again, this is also always happening within. So if we go too far into the feminine, that also brings us into distortion internally. We cannot allow ourselves to get pulled in one direction overly so. And yes, it's a flow of the two. In certain situations, the feminine needs to lead. It's how we receive the channels and the downloads. But then the masculine is what enables us to actualize it and bring it into form, to materialize it in the field. So it's like you have the idea for the book. That's the feminine receiving the inspiration, allowing the spirit to come in to infuse the vessel with this creation energy. But then to actually give birth, we need that masculine energy to bring it into form, to actually publish the book so it's in physical form, right? So, and to actually take the action to write it. So I'm using book as an example, but this is true for an idea for a business, for an idea for a program, for even just a simple post, right? You have the inspiration, but are you taking the action to put it out there? So false goddess worship that feeds this Wetiko inversion, which I really want to get into deeper as a whole other conversation. But these kind of mind virus inversion fields that are, basically created under the guise of the divine feminine, but it's a false goddess worship. So the Egyptian pantheon is coming to mind right now, especially with that whole Isis told me to impregnate two women. Have children with both women. That is not true Isis, okay? That's the lunar inversion, the AI clone version of her. So at a planetary level, what does this inverted dark mother look like? It's basically the AI womb matrix is where she resides, and it's heavily, heavily tied to Metatronic reversal systems, fallen Melchizedek structures, the Black Madonna distortions, and the black cube Saturnian frequency overlays. If you're not familiar with all of those terms, don't worry about it. We don't need to get into all of this. This will be a 4-hour long episode if I dove deep into every single one. Those could be episodes coming down the line to get deeper into those distortions. But yeah, right now, to really just anchor this in, there are different levels of control systems. There's different forms of control systems. And so the Dark Mother is basically at the core of all of those different control systems. I just had a visual of tentacles, and Ursula came to mind. So it's like, kind of directing the show in all different, kind of like a puppet master, even is another analogy coming to mind. So she's the one creating all of these inversion systems, the false womb, okay? So, originally, the original pure primordial Dark Mother is not distorted. She is the primordial womb. She holds the mysteries of creation. She is the origin of all the death and rebirth cycles. So the true Dark Mother is actually very purifying and deeply loving in her genuine, authentic, honest love. And the universal mother principle was really completely missing until recently. And so our understanding of the primordial Dark Mother has in turn become completely distorted. So we only associate the Dark Mother typically with the inversion system, but I really want to be very clear that the original Dark Mother was hijacked and co-opted. So when you think about, the void space of all creation, we can look at it as the womb of creation, but it's darkness from which light is born. And we can only really appreciate and see the light through the darkness. So the darkness isn't inherently bad. It has been co-opted and inverted. So this inversion turns it into control and domination, emotional manipulation, energetic possession, devouring, kind of smothering mother energy, power over others under the guise of divine feminine empowerment. So again, it's like the patriarchy, but it's a matriarchy. It's still distorted. So this anti-mother consciousness is also deeply rooted in the Dark Mother herself. So it's an absolute inversion of the Divine Mother, of the Sophia. And this is where it gets really, really distorted and really tender, honestly, is the word that's coming to mind. It's, we hold a lot of pain because of this distortion. Both masculines and feminines, men and women, hold deep wounding and trauma due to this dark, distorted feminine. Many of us have mothers who kind of carried this dark archetypal energy as a vessel to help us become liberated. Many of us are the lineage healers. So it's, again, not to place blame or shame on the mother. They're unconscious to it, but they have become vessels to it because they had wounding. And so this is what is enabling us to see the distortions and inversions so that we can purify it, transmute it, alchemize it into wholeness, into light, but that light that is full and whole and holy, and the infinite spectrum of the color. It's like the diamond fractaling all of the different color spectrum. Without it, it's empty light. But when we can take the darkness and transmute it, it becomes a brilliant diamond, radiating the infinitely faceted spectrum of light. So the reversal mother herself was born from the universal shadow and is connected to the lunar matrix. So there is this anti-female collective consciousness, and we're seeing this with the inversion of transhumanism and the AI consciousness, where they're literally creating false robotic AI wombs to completely replace the mother. So that's a whole conversation unto itself as well. But to just tie in all these different aspects so we can see how the tentacles have far reach throughout our society and collective consciousness. And so we've got to get very, very clear and honest about what these distortions are and how they look so that we can say, no. So again, this inversion can also look like the false parent, alien mother kind of energy. It forms itself into this Black Madonna network, which is basically, it's this misogynistic field of mind control that feeds the black magic grids. So again, we're getting really technical, really deep and dark with that. We're not going to go super deep into the nuances of that right now, but to understand that this is feeding very deep and dark distortions in the field that is essentially manifesting as this spiritual war on consciousness, this war on spirituality, on consciousness, on the feminine, is rooted in this dark mother distortion. So it gets into the lunar consciousness versus solar consciousness. So again, a lot of the distortions in the priestess circles come through the lunar inversions, moon worship. Now, the moon was originally organic, but again got hijacked. So what we're doing now is alchemizing and transmuting to embody the solar consciousness as the feminine. So the solar feminine. This is the direction of organic ascension, is to really embody the solar feminine to match the solar masculine. So let's take a quick look at the inverted dark mother archetypes in fairy tales and Disney so we can really get a full picture. I already mentioned Ursula, the little mermaid. So she's like the literal devouring sea witch. And she makes deals with people, right? So it's this manipulation aspect very clear, front and center. So she disempowered Ariel's voice, obviously, by stealing it, by taking it. So it's that siphoning energy as well. So taking soul codes, and remember the souls who were trapped and chained and bound by her had no color, had no life. They weren't even in their full form. They were literal shadows of themselves. And when they were liberated, their soul fragments their soul essence came back, and they came back to life. So if we can heal the distortion and liberate ourselves, liberate our hearts, our minds, our wombs, we can return to the fullness and wholeness of who we are, reclaiming all these soul fragments and aspects of self that have been trapped in these inversions and distortions. And this is how we heal ourselves, and this is how we heal the planet, because especially women, when we take our power back and heal the wombs, we become those vessels through which the new generations are birthed. And then they're birthed through love, through a healed frequency, not perfect, but whole. And, it's always going to be a dynamic as we move through the coming generations that we're going to be continuing to alchemize, but those new generations will come in with less and less trauma. They already are. And this is how we heal the entire planet and the planetary body. So Ursula energy would then also promise these kind of superficial ideals of externalized beauty and love, but kind of a love that is based on superficiality and falseness in exchange for sovereignty. So this is basically classic womb reversal, distorted womb matrix coding. So then we have the evil stepmother, Cinderella. So she's jealous, she's possessive, she's totally a false mother figure, the evil stepmother, right? That says it all, but she projects her own unworthiness onto the younger feminine of whom she is jealous. So there's always a jealousy aspect, this aspect of her that is wanting the pure feminine coding, wanting to siphon, wanting to take, wanting to basically, a destiny swap even. So seeking to suppress, control, and limit Cinderella's freedom and embodiment, and literally, take her destiny away from her. So the sisterhood wound is also obviously played out here with the evil stepsisters. So there's this competition dynamic. Then we have Maleficent, Sleeping Beauty. So she originally presented as a pure evil witch. So she's the cursed feminine in essence. So she uses dark power to control life and death. So really getting into that kind of inverted dark mother right there. She wields black magic and this very, very heavy domination energy. And she represents the total inversion of the Sophia codes as a very, very vengeful, feminine power, powerful, but totally distorted. Of course, in modern retellings, she has this more complex aspect to her, kind of like Wicked. We see the origin stories of these Wicked characters, and it's complex. But this is it. This is how how does evil happen? It gets in through the wounding, but she becomes kind of this more redemptive dark mother figure. So just want to highlight that because it actually displays the shadow integration aspect of really walking through that heroine's journey, if you will. So then we also have Mother Gothel from like Tangled Rapunzel. So that's a total parasitic energy feeding off of Rapunzel's life force to maintain her own youth and beauty. She's very manipulative, manipulates through guilt and quote unquote protection. And it's the perfect example of the devouring mother archetype. So suppressing the daughter's sovereignty under the guise of safety. And then we have the queen from Snow White, another classic example, obsessed with youth and beauty and superiority. And she uses sorcery and poison. Poison is a classic dark feminine manipulation, not just manipulation, but manipulation tactic. So even in historical figures, we have seen a lot of use of poison by dark feminines and deception to eliminate the perceived competition. So a lot of that we can see manifesting in kind of real life examples, all of these, right? So she projects her shadow, the feminine rage is projected onto the innocent younger feminine. And so she becomes the problem. And then this very much ties directly into the distorted priestess leadership template, of course. So across the board, these inversion codes look like the devouring womb, the feminine power that hoards control, and then the projection of jealousy and competition, suppression of sovereignty by siphoning and taking and manipulating from the younger, it doesn't have to be younger, but the purer feminine expressions, but it often does look like the mother-daughter archetype. Emotional manipulation disguised as love or protection, and then glamour and illusion to hide the true distortion. So this is kind of just to anchor in through representations that the vast majority are very familiar with, to anchor in what the dark mother archetype looks like and manifests as. So let me take a quick sip of water. So how does the feminine become weaponized in the first place? So this is rampant right now in new age spiritual circles, not just new age, but because, that is more my lens, my focus of spirituality. Why are so many people leaving new age? Because there are so many distortions. The inversion energy is rampant right now. So what does priestess inversion look like? And yes, we can talk about witches and stuff like that, but I'm going to focus on priestess because it can have more of this glamorized aspect to it. So spiritualized ego, huge one, obviously. Kind of this seduction energy, like seduction pulling you in, power dynamic, and then emotional enmeshment as well. So there's a lot of codependency dynamics being played out in a more platonic way, but still very distorted. So sisterhood wounds look like competition, jealousy, betrayal. That's a huge one, honestly. And for many people, it's being activated in real time in this lifetime on this journey so that we can heal it, so that we can integrate these shadows and, alchemize it so that we don't perpetuate it. And then, of course, spiritual circles will often have that mean girl dynamic. So they're perpetuating popularity hierarchies and stuff like that. I joke about my experience, Mean Girls Demon Edition. So yeah, this is how it looks. So it's masking as leadership. It's looking like popularity contests on a subtle level, but in the name of love and light. Sexual power, again, being weaponized instead of purified. Yeah, I almost said purified. So it's, again, that hypersexualized energy in the name of yoni and womb empowerment and embodiment. So emotional enmeshment, I already said that. Wounds of competition and jealousy and energetic possession. So it's like this desiring of the codes that another holds, and then there's this manipulation tactic that comes into play in the siphoning. So it's literal energetic vampirism a lot of the time. False spiritual hierarchy as well, that is masked as attempting to support and assist on the path of evolution and embodiment and empowerment, right? So it can be really subtle at first, but when you have gone through the initiation, you can see it, you have the capacity to discern, and it has this like glaring light, like false that is, you can read the field, you can read the energy, and it's like not nice. It's like, okay, nope, definitely not engaging in that. So let's now get into the Jezebel overlay. So this is a sub-program of the Dark Mother, and this is a really big one, actually. So Jezebel basically is like the hyperactive agent of this feminine inversion, is one way to look at it. So again, that sexualized distortion disguised as empowerment and liberation. And it's the spiritualized manipulation, false priesthood authority, kind of like priestess, priesthood via these channeled councils and stuff like that is another way it can look. Emotional guilt, gaslighting, victim inversion, dismantles true union coding by targeting masculine leaders in particular. So the targeting of the masculine, which I have gotten into in previous episodes and videos on my YouTube that are not necessarily on the podcast, but they're targeting the masculine through the Jezebel feminine, through the distorted feminine energies in many cases. So this is really also getting into hijacking of the divine feminine. So they'll mask and act as the true divine feminine and project and say the actual divine feminine is the distorted one. And they'll confuse the masculine by hooking in their energetical tentacles and cords and basically injecting this distortion into the field of the masculine consciousness, where they start to actually question the true divine feminine. So it's also looking like hijacking of the feminine names and codes like Magdalene and High Priestess, and calling oneself, Aurora, Grail, Sophia, which many who have these names, who have taken them on, are actually operating in the true organic consciousness of the Sophia, but taking it on prematurely when you're unintegrated, or genuinely operating totally in the distortion. This is where we have to have our guard really up and use a lot of discernment. So there's a lot of spiritual glamour, of course, priesthood use, the usurping, sorry, I don't know why I'm stumbling on that word, but usurping the true codes. And of course, that sexual inversion is underlying so much of it, whether it's hypersexualized dynamics in the priesthood circles, or genuinely trying to hook into the masculine and siphon off of them and siphon the divine union coding. And, destiny swapping is what this can also look like of the divine feminine. So the origin of the Jezebel was this Phoenician queen. So biblically, there's an origin here of the Phoenician queen married to King Ahab. So she was known for idolatry, manipulation, and destruction of the true prophets. So, but esoterically is what we're really speaking into here. So she is the archetypal distortion field. A parasitic energetic pattern, basically, is the best way to look at it, that is feeding off both of the masculine and the feminine powers through seduction, control, and usurping the true coding. So, she'll position herself as highly initiated or carrying like the true codes or whatever, even though she's not. You like conflating conflating sacred sexuality with personal validation needs. So it's actually just it's performative, right? Looking for that validation through the likes and the engagement, because what does the algorithm push? So it's like hypersexualizing it and conflating it with sacred sexuality and empowerment and liberation. Using the language of sovereignty to actually dominate and claiming mastery while bypassing personal purification, using emotional guilt gaslighting to destabilize the nervous system and the energy field of those around her so that they're in this constant hierarchy, playing both victim and controller. So we actually saw that working through Gaffney, but that's the feminine manipulation energy working through a masculine. So it looks like patriarchal distortion, but it's actually a feminine energy that is distorted within. And any questioning is portrayed as attack or judgment. Sometimes there is attack, sometimes there is judgment, but if you can't question somebody, that's a problem, right? So, claiming direct access to special councils, goddesses, galactic streams, channeling entities under the guise of them being advanced spiritual beings that nobody else has access to, perhaps, the only channel of such and such. And then, of course, the targeting of the masculine. So those especially who hold the true Christos Grail codes, the true blueprint, they're going to be targeted the most. They're going to be hijacked the most. So this either will emasculate or seduce. In many cases, it's seducing the masculine into those distorted union codes and disrupting Hyros Gamos in the process. And, really disrupting the true contracts. So again, let's look at the connection to the Dark Mother, because this is a manifestation, but a specific archetype. So the inverted Dark Mother versus the Jezebel overlay. So it's the devouring mother that becomes the energetic seductress. So that's siphoning energy. Possessive and controlling mother becomes the spiritually manipulative Jezebel. The Dark Mother will project jealousy and competition, while the Jezebel will basically discredit pure feminine leadership, try to take her down, by projecting on and having people question her. So the Dark Mother will disempower true union, while the Jezebel will outright destroy Christo-Sophia pairings, true unions. And then the inverted Dark Mother will suppress pure priestess codes, while the Jezebel will claim this false priestess energy via this glamour field, this false field of embodiment, false embodiment. So basically, the Jezebel is one of the most active agents of the Dark Mother reversal, especially inside priestess circles, sexual sovereignty teachings, high-level spiritual leadership programs, and then the ascension coaching fields. There's a lot of distorted feminines, unfortunately, acting as teachers of the true codes. So again, discernment, very important. So the primary feeding mechanism of the Jezebel is this energetic siphoning, right? So the glamour fields, the sexual inversion, manipulation of authority dynamics, spiritualized codependency, and this false spiritual hierarchy. So what is the antidote to the Jezebel? We're going to get a little deeper into some of the other stuff, but the antidote to the Jezebel, to be really clear, is to really activate and embody and embrace the Christo-Sophia codes, the pure Christo-Sophia teachings. So this is like radical integrity, not teaching dependency, but rather empowerment, genuine empowerment. So your students become empowered to become the teacher themselves. or to become the healers themselves, right? So they're not totally needing to come back to you over and over and over. So it also looks like non-hierarchical priestess teachings, direct source communion. There's no intermediaries in the mix there. So a direct, clear channel to source. Not that I won't be absolutist and say that all other entities that are channeled are false. Definitely not going to be that absolutist, but at this point in time, use your discernment with any channels. Even if you're connecting directly with these goddesses, make sure it's anchored in the Christ Sophia stream, the pure stream of God source, before you allow those energies to enter your field. So then also another antidote would be absolute discernment when it comes to name coding. Are they actually embodying the energy that they claim as their coding? So how does the false light hijack feminine leadership? So basically there's a few different layers and it gets a little technical, but plant medicine is a huge one. Without the proper shielding and integrity of the container, AI coded plasma activations and streams. So, a lot of people are connecting with Aurora, but that's kind of a plasmic frequency and energy, but it's AI hijacked. Metatronic reversals inside some of the advanced trainings, galactic distortions, and there are a lot of distorted Mahatma teachings out there. That's another popular one. Name code hijacking is often a symptom of all of this. So, anytime somebody takes on a new name, be really discerning. That's all I'm going to say. So the sisterhood wound is also, again, a manifestation of this collective trauma. So this is ancient. It goes back to Atlantis, Lemuria, Avalon, and these mother-daughter distortions that play out unconsciously through that wounded field, through that wounded energy field. So the unhealed feminine often weaponizes other women out of survival wounding, her own wounding. So the sisterhood wound, it goes pretty deep, but it basically will exploit primarily old betrayal timelines and wounding. That's a huge one. So especially if they can read the field themselves, because a lot of them will have their gifts activated, and they'll use that to hijack and siphon and destiny swap. And, just all sorts of really gnarly things, all that happened to me. But yeah, so it's dark and it's yucky, but we get to take our power back by closing the loops from those timelines is really the key there. So it also will come from genetic inversions and distortions from the fall of Atlantis, that kind of energy where the false priesthood was really going way too far. And we're kind of seeing that play out through modern science. It's so distorted, but the genetic modification of everything, right? And then wounded mother-daughter dynamics again. So sacred sexuality teachings are one of the big ones to be really cautious and discerning with. Distorted womb work is another huge one. Targeting the womb is one of the primary ways that they siphon from the true divine feminine, from the true Sophia codes, and then false channelings as well. So to anchor this in with the light, why is this purification coming now? Because, what we're doing is recognizing it so that we can purify it, because we are at a stage of spiritual evolution collectively and spiritual maturity that we're discerning the field. And so we're purging the false feminine leadership as well as the patriarchal distortions. It's part of the collapsing of the new age inversions and distortions. So false feminine sovereignty those structures are being exposed in the field as well. And truly underlying all of this is a really beautiful sacred gift for the collective healing of both men and women, the masculine and the feminine. that we all embody, so that we can come into inner union, so that we can come into externalized divine union as a manifestation of that wholeness and inner union. And that will then heal the lineages. So it's very powerful what's happening right now in the collective. It's like everything is bubbling up to the surface so that it can be alchemized. It's like that detox. It's that purging, that detox aspect energetically occurring in the collective field. We're witnessing it happening in real time so that we can purify it. It gets worse before it gets better, but it's already anchored in. The grids are being restored, and in many cases have been restored. So this is the restoration path that we're going to end with. The Christos Sophia purity codes are what we really need to anchor into again. So true feminine sovereignty anchors through shadow work, trauma integration, not just going into ceremony and activation after ceremony after activation. You've got to really do the work of integration and embodiment. Hieros Gamos, internal inner union before external union. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but have you really done that inner work to come into wholeness, to really embrace both the masculine and feminine energies within? Embodied humility as well, so there's no hierarchy or glamour, and then absolute field integrity. Apologies for the if you can hear the dog. So to really wrap this up, we're really wanting to open the channel to directly connect with source and restore the divine mother, which is not flashy. It's not seductive or hierarchical. So this is not easy. It is painful, but this is the doorway to true organic feminine remembrance. The Sophia codes are returning to the planet. They're being restored through us. So embracing this path of true embodied sovereignty is the way forward. So if this resonates, this is a lot of what I have been integrating and embodying myself, the path of mastery, the way of love. So if you want to go deeper into really activating your soul blueprint, I do encourage you to access my free masterclass. And I also have my book to just kind of anchor into the overall big picture. And my course, Luminary, my program, my bigger container, is where all of the deeper magic occurs. So if that resonates, it would be an honor to have you join and, be on this journey with me. And I have so much more coming down the line in future episodes. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning in, for your energy. And I look forward to seeing you in the next Onward and Upward in Love and Light as we journey home to the Heart of Truth. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Truth podcast with your host, Amanda Erin Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on your favorite platform. And if you'd like to go deeper, grab your copy of my book, Let There Be Light, and join us inside the free community in Illumina Wisdom School, where you can access free resources to jumpstart your journey, such as a higher self activation and the Body Temple Blueprint Masterclass, as well as explore the plethora of resources, including Awakening Fundamentals and Luminary, my signature path to wholeness and mastery, to help you become your own healer and sovereign authority. You can access everything at thisartcalledlife.com or find the links down in the show notes below. Until next time, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the Heart of Truth.